Hey guys, Callum here from 3D Tomorrow. In today's video I'm going to show you how you can transform 3D prints using spray painting. Let's go! So I was printing a model the other day and I ran out of material midway through. It looks like there was a lot more on the spool than there was, but rather than wasting the bottom half I thought I'd switch over and print the top in a different colour. But obviously this looks quite weird, so I'm going to spray paint it and show you how you can get a nice finish using this process. The bare minimum of what you're going to need if you're trying this process at home is of course a model to spray paint, some spray paint, and of course safety wise some sort of mask. There's loads about at the moment, so grab something useful. For my process I also use filler primer, as this really helps to get into the layers of the 3D printing and help give an overall smooth finish. And I'm also going to use clear lacquer at the end just to give it that real nice juicy looking finish. Finally, I also like to use one of these, which is a spray gun applicator. It just helps you to get a nice even coat rather than having to manually push the button of the spray paint can with your finger. So you'll notice I'm outside today. You can do this inside, but it's important to be in a well ventilated space because, you know, this stuff does stink and it's not particularly good for you to breathe in. Okay, so let's get started. First step is to shake up the spray paint. Lots of people don't bother with this, but it is really important because spray paint actually consists of two main components. You've got the paint itself, but you've also got a propellant. And if you don't shake it properly, you can end up just spraying the bad mix basically, and it won't work as it's supposed to. So do give it a shake. It's meant to be shaken for about 2 minutes. What we're going to do now.
2 very boring minutes later.
Okay, so that's all shaken up. I can now put on the spray gun applicator. Just clips onto the top of the bottle like that, and then when you push down on the lever, it squirts out the front. What I'm going to do when I apply the paint to a model in a minute is start off the model, spray across, and then release. Hopefully that will make sense in a minute. As I said, I'm using filler primer. I like to start with this as well, and I also like the fact it's a completely different colour because then it makes it very easy to see what you're doing when you're putting the next coats on in the main colour. So firstly, just start with a little press of the trigger to make sure the paint's coming out alright, and then start off the model, spray across and release. Start off the model, spray across and release, and so on. Now why you do that is to ensure that you get a very even coat. If you were to start directly onto the model, you would end up with a big splurge where it starts, and then as you move across, a more even coat. And that's because it's very difficult to anticipate when the paint's actually going to start coming out of the can. When you're doing little pieces like this, it's not the end of the world if you accidentally start on the piece, but if you're doing more high production units, you really do need to make sure that you're getting even coats, else you will be affecting the end finish quite drastically. It's an awkward shaped model, this one, so it's going to need a couple of coats on the spray primer just to get in from all the angles, but you need to leave it for about 20 minutes in between each coat to make sure that it dries properly. Still going to need a few more coats. It's not the highest resolution of prints, and PETG often has a few skags anyway, so I will put a few more coats on. I'm not too worried about the actual resolution of the print getting lost. I'd rather it had a nice thick coating. When the can's getting empty, it's really important to not try and get every last drop out, because the flow becomes quite uneven, so you're best to just move on to a new can. Something that a primer coat can be really useful for is helping you to see issues in the model that weren't necessarily so apparent before it was painted. You can see down the wing here it actually has quite a lot of different skags, and by just using some little flush cutters I can clean the model up a bit more before proceeding to the next coat. If you were actually going to do this and you wanted an absolutely fantastic finish, then I would suggest letting this primer coat dry for a good 24 hours and then proceeding to sand and do more cutting. That just makes sure that the coat is properly hardened and you don't end up covered in mess. Although it's touch dry after 15-20 minutes, it's not ready for post-processing until a full 24 hours have passed. So there you have it, one spray painted, 3D printed bird. It's not the most beautiful finish, but the underlying model was a bit rough, and without hours of sanding preparation, which I couldn't be bothered to do, this is as bad as good as you're going to get it. With all things, preparation is key, so if you do want something that looks like it's come from a professional manufacturing line, you're going to have to put the hours in sanding beforehand. But the process of the painting is still very much the same, and I hope you've learned how to do it for your own project. If you did like the video, please do give it a like, and by all means subscribe, and I will see you next time. Cheers.